Hello, hello, everyone. Hi, all. Welcome to the RISE webinar. My name is Tsapo Setole, usually called by the name Teddy. I am the project coordinator at RISE International. I'm with my co-host. His name is Risepile Ramoko. Hi, Reds.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I'm pleased to be with you.
Awesome. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, RISE is a non-profit social enterprise that operates in Lesotho, a landlocked country in South Africa. We focus on economic development through job creation, skills development, and entrepreneurship, specifically in the built environment through a fellowship program called In Loco. The fellowship is a design, build, and entrepreneurship program for graduates who have studied architecture, construction management, civil and electrical engineering, plumbing and carpentry, among other disciplines. The fellows get a hands-on learning experience while at the same time, they solve problems in infrastructure. We turn job seekers into job creators by helping them start their own businesses and taking them through a 3-year incubation program where we connect them with mentors, co-working space, tools, clients, among other resources. Now, today we are hosting students from Alta Scuola Politecnica. It's a university in Italy. And they'll be taking us through their research and studies around the water realms in Lesotho. And we also have panelists who will be joining us from different institutions in Lesotho, such as from UNDP, from BETCO, from European Union, as well as World Bank. Now, from UNDP, we have Ndate Fusitsirisote. Ndate is currently working for UNDP Small Grants Program. Now, they help communities with funds to protect as well as to manage environment sustainability. And these communities being supported include youth associations. Ndateso has worked for the Lesotho Council of NGOs. He has a BSc in agriculture and is now pursuing his master's in science in agricultural extension with the National University of Lesotho. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you know that he likes football and athletics. We also have Tate Yoeshiro Ishihara from the World Bank. He's a country representative there. And Tate Yoeshiro started his assignment as the country representative for World Bank office in Maseru from February 2020. He's a Japanese national, and he joined the World Bank in 2001. And Yoeshiro has since held various positions within the bank, and his most recent being a resident representative and senior economist for Bhutan country unit. Before that, he held various positions, including economist in Indonesia and senior country economist in Afghanistan and Rwanda. He spent part of his career in policy department in Washington, D.C. on different development effectiveness and results management. Mr. Ishihara holds a PhD in development economics from the Graduate School of International Development of Nagoya University in Japan. And he also has a broad operational expertise and technical skills and rich client experience across various regions of the World Bank. And Tate Ishihara will also be giving us a speech at the end of the webinar today, or actually before the end of the webinar. And we also have Ndate Libesankune, who's joining us from UNDP, as well as Mario Farenti, who's joining us from the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll go ahead and hand over to Mario to do actually, Matteo, sorry about that. I'll go ahead and hand over to Matteo to do introduction, as well as Yara to do introductions of the project, as they have worked on the project closely before we go ahead and jump straight into the ideas and the research done by the master students at Alta Scuola University. Over to you, Matteo and Yara.
Okay, so thank you for the invitation. My name is Matteo Poli. I'm a professor at the Politecnico di Milano, and I'm very happy to present the students that me and the architect Giada Zuan have been working with in Loano, which is a place where we held a workshop of the Alta Scuola Politecnica. So the Alta Scuola Politecnica is a joint project between the Politecnico di Milano and Politecnico di Torino. And every year there is a workshop, an intensive workshop where students from very different backgrounds come together and work in a very intensive session, which is lasting 4 days. An output which is based on a proposal that so I was saying we gave the students a very broad task, and we asked them to develop 5 different projects in groups on the theme of the country, basically. So they developed very interesting proposals, and so I'm very glad of this opportunity. I thank RISE. It's the second time for me that I work with the NGO. I don't know if we're still online.
Sorry about that. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Matteo. If Jada, you'd like to say anything at all about the projects?
No, I think it's fine. Matteo did a proper introduction, and I just to introduce myself. I was tutoring the students while we were having the workshop. So yeah, I think everyone will present each project, and maybe we can just start with that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we're going to go ahead and present the videos from the group D0, and they'll introduce themselves as well as what their project and idea and the research was all about. And then I'll hand over to my co-host, who will then take questions from the floor as well as from the panelists. Please also feel free, if you'd like to ask any question at all, please feel free to let us know what kind of questions you have, unmute yourself, so that we can play those actually, so that we can say something. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play the video.
Developed as part of the program. We are Dr. Zaghi Astrid, Jose Aurora, Caputi Gabriella, and Rinaldoni Davide. We present.
I think that when you share the screen, there's an option to share the sound.
We are Dr. Zaghi Astrid, Jose Aurora, Caputi Gabriella, and Rinaldoni Davide. And we present the Stone project. When asked was to develop a solution that would benefit the people of Lesotho. So the next few slides focus on more research to better understand. The method analysis was particularly useful in shaping a review. So, Highlands Water Project, a key element in the economy of the country that exploits water, which is its main natural resource, impacts on the population. It is very clear that the general perception is that the program is damaging the environment, putting at risk social connections and heritage, and the promises of technological development are not being delivered upon. From our research, we developed a problem tree, which would help visualize issues that require the solution. At the core, there is a lack of access to safe water. However, on our project, we moved to focus on outer branches of the tree, those of identity, gender inequality, and the effects on academic performances, which stem from the current economy management of the country. The last step before designing a solution was to understand the stakeholders presently involved. The most notable ones are reported in these slides, and are the environment, the villages of Lesotho, and the people in South Africa. The first two would clearly benefit from a new solution that will make Lesotho more economically independent, and that has a positive impact on the environment. The latter would be quite contrary to a solution that directly impacts their main water source coming from the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. To sum up this first part of the project, the question that needs to be addressed is the following. How can we bring Lesotho in the spotlight, preserve and empower its heritage around natural resources, and allow its people to thrive? We analyzed 2 possible solutions before coming to a conclusion. The first would make use of external resources and bring them to Lesotho. The second one would bring the products of Lesotho to the outside. We named the first solution the African Stone Project, taking after other similar projects like the ones reported in the slide that already exist around the world. The solution entails the development of a climbing program throughout the country. Here are the results of the SWOT analysis concerning the first solution. Lesotho has a very interesting landscape suitable for climbing. Moreover, this solution involves health and environment preservation through sports and infrastructures. It is worth noting that it depends on tourism, which is still not very developed in the country and could represent an issue, especially in the early stages. The second solution that was considered was named the Artisan Heritage and involved exporting products crafted by cooperative women. The SWOT analysis for this solution highlighted the strengths and opportunities available, mainly in the wide traditional heritage that results in high-quality products and how this would allow the preservation of the heritage through younger generations, also notably bringing women empowerment. The solution is, however, threatened by a lack of organization which causes difficulties in product export, made worse by limited international exposure of Lesotho. We opted to further develop the first solution, the African Stone Project. This implies focusing on two main aspects: mountain sports such as climbing, hiking, or biking, and spreading awareness of these activities through different sources of media. The next few slides detail the various aspects of the project. Our proposed solution makes use of another important resource of Lesotho, taking its mountains as a source of inspiration. Other than the economic impact of going through with this project, it is worth considering the social impact it would have. Making the mountains truly available to the community means creating community spaces to practice sports which could be used both for physical activity but also to strengthen community bonds. The facilities could be built based on what best identifies each community, giving representation to them.
Here I highlighted the 6 points that make the discussed project worthy of attention. The implementation could be started right away, since there are already organizations that open new climbing paths and show them on social media. The solution will bring international attention, both promoting tourism and raising awareness on the other issues of the country. It keeps the community involved, and by forming local trail guides, it allows to share the heritage and identity of Lesotho with the world. The project is low impact on the environment and strives to preserve it. Finally, it does not affect the present water agreement with South Africa. As part of the solution development, a more detailed analysis of the stakeholders were performed. This included drawing a power interest matrix, also to identify possible conflicts. Finally, a tentative timeline for the project was drawn, based on objectives and stakeholders involved. The short-term goal will be opening new climbing routes through professional climbers. This will need to be documented and shared on media to provide visibility to the initiative. The medium-term goal entails attracting amateur climbers and establishing trekking routes, which also need to be mapped, potentially developing a smartphone application. In this phase, it is key to start training local trail guides and encourage interest in mountain sports by building, for example, climbing walls in schools. All of this will be sustained by applying for development funds provided by external organizations. In the long-term horizon, cooperatives of local trail guides could be formed, and better facilities for tourism could be built, encouraging the local government involved. A last note should be made on the agreement here reported currently active between Lesotho and the European Union for development of African countries. This is the end of our presentation. We are available for further questions at our contact emails.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for paying attention to that video. I'll go ahead and hand over to my co-host to take questions from the panelists as well as the audience, and also ask some questions to the group zero.
Thank you very much. Let me just quickly introduce myself again. My name is Alta Scuola Politecnica, and I'm an architectural designer here at RISE. So I'll be facilitating the next part of question and answers. So before we get into that, I just wanted to ask if from the participants in the meeting, is there any questions that you may have for what we just watched? If there are, I would suggest that you please write them in the chat box, as I will go ahead and ask the first question that I have for group D0. And my first question for D0 is that just from understanding of the context in Lesotho, we have recognized that social projects tend to fail due to poor community participation and fragmented communities and disputes and distribution of profits. So how do you ensure that community participation for such a project can involve community members and function at its highest capacity?
Hello, my name is Astrid. I am one of the authors of the video that you just saw, and I think also Aurora is here.
Yes, hi everyone.
So it is actually a very interesting question that you just posed to us. I would say that we would actually be starting the process that we proposed with the climbing project with an earlier stage of having external association involved to promote the country and such. So possibly that would also entail actually getting the community involved throughout. I don't know if Aurora has any other ideas.
Yes, no, I agree with this answer because we would like to make people like understand the value of the country by bringing people from outside the country into the country and then involving the community. So the process is from the outside to the inside and not from the inside to the inside. That was like the main topic of our project.
I hope this at least like gives a suggestion on where to go.
Sorry, I couldn't catch that, Astrid.
No, I just said that I hope this is something to start from, like to answer your question.
No. I think you gave a very clear answer, unless there's somebody in the chat box who has a question pertaining to that.
Also, can I comment? This is Yoichiro from the World Bank.
Yes, Yoshio, you can comment.
Okay. No, first of all, thank you very, very much and very nicely done on the presentation. And I'm very positively surprised that given limited time and experience, and you captured a lot of good element and about Lesotho. Personally, and I love hiking, and in Lesotho, I've been enjoying hiking very much. I cannot do rock climbing. I'm a height phobia. I love hiking, but and the World Bank and we've been trying to develop tourism sector because there is an untapped and great potential in Lesotho, and including how to provide like a star rating system to hotels. This is part of our project and the program, and which is ongoing. So I just want to share and for your further thought and a couple of issues that I personally facing. And one is that the access to Lesotho is very challenging. And as you can see, I'm from Asia. I'm Japanese, and from Japan to Lesotho, it takes 35 hours. This is the quickest route. And question to my fellow Japanese and my friend is, why do I have to go to Lesotho, spending 30 hours? So this is $1 million question. So what you're proposing is a good, and if we can go a little bit further to convince the other side of the table, this is even nicer. And also, and we've been touching on the community engagement. Part of the issue I see, probably I may have too high standard, is that the issue of hospitality, because the people are not exposed to the people from outside and how to entertain and how to welcome people, and it's a challenging issue. So once again, my original point, if people come outside from Lesotho, say Japan or Italy, people expect world-class experience. And if they miss this kind of experience, and they will spread out their like a challenging and negative experience to the rest of the world. So that's why, and it's important to get it right. And my third and the last point is about the professionalism, because we have certain standard about tourism industry and how people will be treated. But once again, this is very new to Lesotho, and we need to think about and how to enhance professionalism to promote and your project and the tourism in general. Let me stop here. This is not a question, this is a comment from my side. But once again, thank you very much. Great presentation.
Yes,
Thank you for the
thank you
point.
for the feedback. And some of the points that you mentioned, like why we should go to Lesotho, is also something that we have considered while preparing for the presentation. Obviously, due to the limited time that we had, probably we did not go all the way through with this kind of problem, but that's something to consider for sure.
Okay, last question before we move on to D1. Just to add on what Dr. Yoshiri has said, Lesotho is rather far and difficult to access. And on top of that, in size, it's small. So could you walk us through what were your thoughts behind the target audience and how would this work in the context of Lesotho?
Sorry, are you asking me or are you asking any other people?
I'm asking the the D0 group, but you're happy to answer if you have
No. I will let D0 members.
Okay.
Should I take this, Aurora, or do you want?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, you want to know like who we think the target audience is for our project?
Yes,
so,
yes.
I would say we would be starting from a very specific audience, which is the people who are interested in this kind of mountain-related sports. So the first people that would be targeted from this are professional climbers, such as the ones that are involved in the association that we mentioned during the presentation. This would be a way to get Lesotho known to other people through social medias mostly, or other kind of, I don't know, means of spreading awareness that this association use, which would then bring regular people interested in the, but like amateur level people that go climbing or hiking. And at the same time, that's the point where the project would start involving local communities with the creation of facilities for schools or local cooperatives for furthering the project. And that would then possibly spread to like other kinds of activities in Lesotho, possibly. For tourists, I mean.
Okay. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions for D0, I'm going to hand back to Teddy and he will share with us the video for D1 on social alpaca farming.
Hello everyone, we are Soci Alpaca and this is our proposal to help the people of Lesotho. First, we need to understand the problems. 36% of the population lives with $2 a day. 80% rely on subsistence agriculture, which means they eat what they cultivate, and 70% of the food is imported from other countries. Additionally, looking at the map, we can see how the mountainous landscape leaves only 10% of the country's land suitable for agriculture. While the population has learned to adapt, this also means that the land is susceptible to erosion, making it even more difficult to cultivate crops. Lesotho is a country that also exports resources. While water is usually the highlight because of its political role in relationships with neighboring countries, it only represents 5% of the country's GDP. Other exports that represent a higher GDP percent are diamonds and textiles. The solution? Alpaca farming. It may sound strange to you, but many of the problems highlighted so far could be solved. Extra resourcefulness. From alpacas, it is possible to obtain not only valuable wool, which is hypoallergenic and 4 times warmer than traditional wool, but also leather, meat, milk, and feces, which is an excellent odorless fertilizer. Profitable business. In addition to the resources derived from breeding, buying and selling alpacas is a very profitable business. No soil erosion. In contrast to sheep, alpacas have soft hooves that do not damage the soil land. Furthermore, when feeding, they do not uproot grass but cut it, preserving the compactness of the soil. Adaptability. This animal can adapt to very different climates, surviving both in high mountains and in sultry places, needing much less water than other animals such as sheep. The behavior of this animal is kind and friendly. It can be involved in pet therapy programs and co-farming with some other species. Problems. No co-farming with sheep. Alpacas cannot share space with sheep and goats, as this would compromise the health of the camelid's animal behavior. Attention must also be paid to the placement of alpacas within the herd, as there are particular balances to be respected among the male exemplars. Cultural perturbation. Eventually, being a non-native species, integration and acceptance by the local community may be difficult. Despite the critical issues identified, the benefits brought by the introduction of alpaca farming remain, in our opinion, more important. But where to start? Our proposal involves the purchase of alpacas by the government through the allocation of dedicated funds. Subsequently, animals are distributed among pre-existing and new farming structures managed by the local population. The exploitation of not arable land. Due to dam construction, 1,500 hectares of land became not arable. The establishment of alpacas allows soil exploitation and at the same time increases its fertility by enriching it with organic matter, also because species does not need chemical treatments or dilution, increasing welfare. Employment growth. New activities and job creation will be developed in a country affected by unemployment issues. The ease of running an alpaca farm allows the involvement of the entire population, in particular women who generally have difficulty finding work. Moreover, even social problems like prostitution and child exploitation can be reduced. The overall welfare of the country will surely increase. Growth of the textile industry. Wool and leather. The textile industry is a milestone of the local economy and tradition, with the production of blankets and leather goods. Therefore, the exploitation of alpaca wool and leather makes it possible to reconcile tradition with economic benefit. Furthermore, the processing of alpaca wool requires less water and a limited number of treatments, fitting easily into the pre-existing sheep wool industry. Increase in employment and export. The growth of the textile sector means increased engagement and the possibility of expanding the export market, even intercontinental. High-tech. In the long term, the use of sensors to monitor the soil and check the alpaca's state of health is planned. Art. The valuable garments made of alpaca wool and characterized by traditional Lesotho motifs could be introduced into high fashion, promoting the dissemination of local culture. Economy. In addition to contrast soil erosion and the decrease in cultivable areas, the resources obtained from an alpaca farm can be used in various sectors, from construction, with the thermal insulation obtained through wool, to food and economics, through the sale of meat and the alpaca trade. To develop this strategy, the team took into consideration social and economic aspects, trying to approach the culture of Lesotho with an open mind and respect. Our proposal was developed around industries and traditions already present in the culture, all of this always with the goal of improving the lives of the people.
Thank you very much. That was a presentation by Group D1. And please feel free to raise your hand or ask a question in the chat box for this group. But I'll start again and ask Group D1. My first and foremost question is about the procurement of the alpacas to Lesotho. How expensive would that be? And just to add on to that, Lesotho already has a wool and mohair industry. Wouldn't it be beneficial maybe to have thought about enriching that sector instead of going the alpaca routes. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eduardo from team D1. I was a member of the team that developed this solution. And to answer both of your questions, first I want to answer why alpacas. At the end of the day, like we said at the end of the video, what we try to do is try to find a part of the economy that was already developed inside of Lesotho, like the wool business, like the garment, all this part that is already there, so we don't have to make a big investment to develop all the necessary infrastructure. And the reason that why we chose alpacas, it's because of all of the other added benefits that they have. From our research, we also found that there's a high problem with the land that it's suitable for agriculture. So alpacas in a secondary way can help with that because of the way that they pasture and the way that they fertilize the land. They also help with the agriculture side, and also the adaptability to the natural like elements of the country is something that we also found that alpacas can actually withstand. So that's why we chose to obviously not completely substitute. The idea here is not to substitute what is already there, but is to supplement. So in the areas of the country where sheep farming is not suitable, be it because of the landscape, or be it because of the resources, or be it because you need to have more agriculture, the idea would be to introduce in those areas the alpacas to help and to co-farm with what is already being done in there. And as far as the resources required to bring alpacas, again, from our research, we found that there's already some alpacas in neighbor countries, which I am going to be completely honest, we didn't knew that already there were alpacas introduced to South Africa and to some other countries. So what we were proposing is basically to, at least on a first stage, bring the animals from these closer places and then grow the farming inside of the country.
Okay, thank you. Here with us, Ndalethu has a question for the group as well.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Ndate, and the organizers as well. And maybe say one, whether it's a question or it's a comment, let me just put it through. Like the introduction of alpacas, if I pronounce it so well, then I think would require quite a lot of grazing awareness in our community, because our communities are used to farming in sheep, goats, and others that are related and so on. So this would be a new species almost altogether. Then we have to actually work on the awareness creation quite a lot. And apart from that, we also have to have a political will, the support from the politics, because if the politics of the country does not support the idea, then it may become quite futile. So we need to work around the political will from the government of the day, so that at least even the laws, because I think the laws of Lesotho currently do not necessarily touch on alpacas and so on. Maybe say it will be sheep, goats, cattle, and a few related sort of livestock. So the question of coming into the country, I think, would need to really tap into the law so that at least that becomes acceptable to the country with respect to the laws. Among other stakeholders that I think we need to work hard on will include herders, those people that actually look after animals in the countryside and so on. I think they need to be really taken on board, because sometimes I'm not being pessimistic here, but sometimes if they see something that is not common to them, they may want to use it as a toy animal, or sort of like want to kill it, see how, things like that. So I think that particular sector of the community has to be handled and then incorporated so that they become they become supportive to the initiative. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Just to address the comment,
Thank you
actually,
very much,
yeah,
Jim.
one of the
I see we
yes,
also
sorry.
have a hand from Mario. You may continue.
Yes, thank you very much, and congratulations to Group B1 on your presentation. I find the idea very exciting, and I didn't think about alpaca as a solution or an idea for Lesotho. And I believe that what you mentioned about alpacas not contributing to soil erosion like sheep or goats is a very strong point to sell your idea, because soil erosion, as you know, is a big challenge here in Lesotho. What I would encourage you to think about is that when it comes to the wool and mohair market, the main problem is that perhaps a lot of value is not created in Lesotho. The material, the raw material is exported and refined and sold in other markets, and more value could be kept in the country when it comes to wool and mohair. And I think if you go ahead with the idea of alpaca, I would encourage you to think about ways to avoid repeating that mistake that problem that exists in the wool and mohair market, and trying to think from the beginning about how to create value in the country. For example, by associating also refining and manufacturing associated with it, even if it's on a small scale, whatever blankets or or material can be processed here to demonstrate that. Also, something to think about is to maybe create from the start capacity on how to assess the quality of the product, so that this would allow producers to sell at better prices when it comes to national markets. And something else that I would encourage you to think about is to consider whether there are or not international standards when it comes to animal ethics, the treatment of the animals, and embed them in the production and the process from the very beginning, because the international markets are demanding, even though some of these standards for wool and mohair are not mandatory now. We're thinking about 10 or 15 years from now, they may become the norm when it comes to these kind of products. So thank you again, and congratulations on this brilliant idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those comments and considerations. And Dr. Yoshiro, I see your hand is up, so we'll hear from you.
Thank you very much. Let me join Mario to congratulate you on your great presentation. And ideally, like this kind of presentation, and when I first heard alpaca, my first reaction was, am I hearing and am I listening right? And this is alpaca, that animal alpaca. And I really love this kind of like out-of-box thinking, and this is what we need. And so there are many comments and concerns I fully understand, fully agree, and including that value added that I was about to make. But my general reaction is that rather than thinking or rather than finding the reason not being able to do that, let's find a way to make it happen. So this is a great initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ndate Yoshiro, for those comments of thinking outside the box. If there are no more questions, I think we can move on to Group D2, where the project presentation is about the Lesotho base.
Hello everyone, I'm Julian, and I will present you with our Lesotho project. Lesotho is a landlocked country, an enclave in South Africa. It is situated in the Maloti Mountains, which makes it a very water-rich country. Despite this, it is also one of the poorest. The water needs of South Africa culminated in the ambitious Lesotho Highlands Water Project. The Kaitse Dam was completed by 1996, and the reservoir filled with water by 1997. The project should contain overall 5 large dams in remote rural areas. The project aims at closing the gap between two distinct forces. On one side, the economic needs that collides with the cultural sense of the environmental process. Water control and green electricity. But we also notice that tourism represents an opportunity to be exploited. Unfortunately, the dam has its own weakness points like induced seismicity, systematic corruption, and powerless perception by intelligence. It was decided to continue with a best analysis to put the kites and dam into perspective. In fact, Lesotho has an expected GDP growth by 5.2% per annum until 2026, with a high unemployment rate that should decrease to 21% in 2027. After the careful analysis of the external environment regarding the dam, we came to the conclusion that this is a type of crucial infrastructure Lesotho needs for its development. Regarding the economic integration of local population and the systematic corruption, our group proposed to create an organization that should coordinate the activities of different NGOs. As the old Latin saying, divide et impera, we propose the coniuge et prevail against those that are interested in keeping the status quo. In fact, this way the non-profit organizations will be able to increase their power. They should also seek support of the key players like European Union, as Renato did in the past. This way, we can finally present you with the first phase of the Lesotho. It consists of a pathway for tourists around the dam. As you can see, it should go near the settlement where tourists can enjoy the local architecture, food, and agriculture. After the path, they should be able to buy souvenirs and enjoy the projections on the dam. But we'll come back on that in the future. After this, we aim at achieving an expansion in space or creating the path, but also, and most importantly, an expansion in time. The latter will create a downstream value going directly to local population. This way, we hope to achieve a better inclusion. In the short term, we could use existing technology and project directly on the dam. The picture shown on the right regarding the local culture will be used to further enhance tourist experience. Future exhibitions regarding Lesotho will be enriched by using VR technology to underline the real dimensions of the dam. Normal people do not understand the true dimensions of such structures and how they really change the environment. In the medium term, we expect the Lesotho Wonders to be finished with typical shop activities and restaurant functioning. Local population should be active not only in tourism activities but also in preservation of soil. So for now, we saw what we can do with existing technology. That's okay, but it doesn't have a strong focus on the future. So here we have the crucial question. How about the future? What will make this project special? What will ensure that it will succeed? So, with the advent of metaverse, we expect people to experience both the physical and virtual world. From our analysis, we could not ignore such trend, and we really think that any future development should focus on including such technology in the future. But how it can be applied in Lesotho? It can be used, for example, to preserve the local religious practices. This way, the tourists could experience for themselves such spectacular events. In the long term, the project should aim at achieving a complete requalification of the area with an additional sensorial virtual path. And most importantly, I know it sounds quite strong, but it will allow us to travel through time. With the Lesothos, we could reconstruct the environment from how it was before and during the day. This way, the digital tourist not only will be able to travel in the actual world, but also in the old one, where local population used to clean the typical blankets in the river, and so on. Think about it. Isn't it a great experience you would like to have? Thank you for your attention, and see you in the future, in the real world or the Lesothoverse.
Thank you very much, Group D2, on the Lesothoverse. The very exciting futuristic approach. Thank you for the presentation. Once again, we'll be taking questions from the floor for this group. And I will start with mine, which is who is the in Lesotho, who's the target audience for virtual reality experiences, and also the viability of capacitating Basotho to be able to give such a service of virtual reality for experiencing, like you said, the Katedem and so forth.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Ivana, and I was one of the participants that did this solution for Lesotho Verse. As we mentioned in the presentation, our mainly focus for the strategy was around the traditional value of the Lesotho and about the artistic value. So we found the beauty, not just value thing, but also the beauty in the Katsedam and all the traditional clothes that Lesotho people doing. And about the target, as now the Gen Z, for instance, there are a lot of in the gamification world. So we really think that about the target, we don't want to have some constraints. So also the youngsters and the kids from 5 years old can be participants in our strategy. Also, additionally, when we're talking about the artistic value, and we all know that going to museums are also good for young people, but as well for the older ones.
Thank you very much, Ivana.
Thank you.
That answer. That day, Yoshiro, I see your hand is up, so you may take the floor.
Hey, once again, thank you very much. This is I really like this presentation as well. I keep saying the same, but I really mean it. It's mainly because that I went to Katsedam personally, and I did hiking myself. And this is a great area, but it's underdeveloped. So I clearly see the opportunities. And also by having a look at the different presentation, I see the connection between the first presentation and this presentation. So there's no point of dividing different ideas into different ones. So I see the link. And also I really like the use of the virtual reality. And I'm thinking that to use this technology, and especially to promote and to convince people, if people don't see what would be the future of this like a cut area and down the road in the 5 years, and the people cannot imagine. And if you can create like a computer graphic or like a real virtual image and showing to other people to be convinced much easier. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
On that note, what that Yoshiro has said, what are some of the ways that this would generate income? Basically, how would you convince the local community to see this as a viable method of generating income and realizing they can make a living out of offering virtual reality services of such places like Katedem?
Thank you. I will try to respond. This is a very interesting question. Because in this way, we are trying to merge tradition and the future. So we are saving the tradition in the core, but we are just giving them a new ways of seeing, so others can also feel it. Also, younger people can connect better to that, and like the future is in the new generations.
Thank you so much, Ivana, and thank you to everyone that's been contributing to today's to the questions, to the comments, suggestions. Dade Shiro, thank you. Thank you to Dade and Dade who seated right with us in the studio. And thank you so much again to Mario. Please also feel free to text your questions in the chat box and also on our Facebook page, which we are live on right now. Before we go on to the next video, Dade Yoshiro will be leading us. He's asked to leave at 2:15 because he has other commitments before the end of the webinar. So I'd like to give him a chance, and I'd like to give you a chance to say a couple of words before we go on to the next group.
Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, my big apology because I'm not able to stay towards the end of all the session. But as I get all the video, and for sure, and I will and watch all the videos afterwards. But so far, and I've been impressed very much. And today is my day for the youth, because of just before this meeting, and I was joining the development partner meeting and focusing on youth, and including our presentation on youth aspiration in Lesotho. And one of the key so-called constraint for youth, especially in Lesotho, is what we call growth mindset. So this is not something that we can easily address because this is a mindset issue. This is not something that we can teach easily, but it is important. Youth in Lesotho will have to be stimulated and to think by themselves. So I was trying to link these presentations and your initiative with what we have discussed and in the previous meeting. So my suggestion and my hope is that you'll be able to interact with youth and more, and based on your project to stimulate the conversation. And this is a win-win situation. You will get the more hands-on experience and knowledge and from youth in Lesotho, and also you will stimulate youth in Lesotho, and this is win-win situation. So once again, and thank you very, very much, and looking forward to see you virtually and in person in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yoshiro. Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Yoshiro Ishihara, the Director of World Bank in Lesotho. And there's a couple of panelists that will be also leaving before the end of the webinar today, but we should be done at 2:30. So we only have 30 minutes before the end of the webinar. Without further ado, I will go ahead and hand over to my co-host. But first, I'll go on to play the next video from the next group, D3 on Empower Lesotho.
Lesotho, the kingdom of the sky. Lesotho, the landlocked kingdom in southern Africa and a population of just 2 million inhabitants, accounts for less than 0.01% of Africa's GDP. The national economy is based on agriculture, livestock, manufacturing, and mining. Lesotho suffers from periodic droughts, which heavily affect the rural population, mostly relying on subsistence farming as their primary source of income. To mitigate the risks associated with droughts and gain geopolitical relevance, the country joined the Lesotho Water Realms project in the late 80s. The project aimed at realizing dams financed by South Africa that would ultimately satisfy Johannesburg's area water demand in return for realization of electrical power plants and protection of environment. Lesotho's GDP is largely based on export of diamonds, apparel, and water. The impressive Katse Dam, second largest in the continent, produces 110 megawatts and is about infrastructure. The concept dates back to the 1950s, yet it still plays a role in the balance of power between Lesotho and South Africa. As this SWOT analysis shows, the dam has brought regional development, but at the price of soil erosion, unequal distribution of water, and lack of irrigation. Stakeholders are mapped according to conflicts, money, and information exchange. They include government institutions, foreign institutions, private companies, and the local community. After analyzing the dam, we've seen the potential that network of activities revolving around the infrastructure, such as bottled water production, improved irrigation systems, and the creation of computational clusters to foster innovation, work, and educational opportunities for the area. Eventually, we focused on the cluster computing scenario, or the data center. Every year, the demand for computational power increased worldwide. High-performance computing, or HPC, has become a strategic resource in digital-era economies. Despite its high capital spatial density, the energy-intensive aspect of HPC requires cheap energy availability. Water can be an effective energy source to power data centers. Computing stations require cooling. A heat exchanger can benefit from proximity to the dam, establishing a virtuous circle of resource usage. Constructions of data centers bring development and growth, empowering communities. SWOT analysis for data center scenarios brought up several key aspects. The main strength we foresee is the increase in water value activity for Lesotho, albeit required the diffusion of internet infrastructure. The map of the stakeholders classifies by power and interest the connections by conflicts, money exchange, and information exchange. We find government institutions, universities, international players, and the local community. The latter in particular has needs like preservation of national identity, rural reality, and self-subsistence. The hyperpower availability required by HPC at competitive price makes Lesotho the perfect location. Data can be transferred and stored remotely from anywhere, thanks to the internet connection. In the short term, it's likely to see the construction of medium-sized data center in 6 to 12 months, although relying on South African internet infrastructure. In the medium term, we expect to see new skilled job positions for the community and the creation of independent web networks. The long run and ever-growing business relationships will make Lesotho competitive benchmark worldwide. We've performed a risk assessment classified by severity and probability. Risk mitigation strategies are proposed for each, and most of the strategies are already implemented in similar projects. Besides the business attraction of computational clusters, there's room for further collaboration between Lesotho and European universities. Fundings are likely to come from private-owned tech-rich companies, African Development Fund, or NGOs, as well as neighboring enterprises and industries. Empower Lesotho, greater water prosperity.
Thank you very much, Group D3, for the presentation on Empower Lesotho. We will be taking questions. Please feel free to raise your hand or write it in the chat box towards Group D3. That is true. Also, if you have a question, please feel free. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Nazi. Actually, it's not a question per se. It's just a recommendation or just a comment that since I also work with the water resources management in the highlands, I highly recommend that one of the key areas that has to be focused on would be the question of protection and management of wetlands, because without which really the flowing water, as it does to South Africa and to other low stream countries, as well as parts of the country, Lesotho, would not really be sustainable without us managing the water resources up in the highlands far much better. I think that is one area where we have to focus on, because as we speak, some of the wetlands really have dried up. Of course, with more rainfall, they will try to recharge. But because of general less, how do I put it? But because of degradation that has occurred, now some of them can only recharge because there's water, there's rainfall. But with prolonged periods of less rainfall, then those dry up. And other management practices that we do in the country, like road construction and others, really have to be taken care of, because some of which are constructed and they interfere with the storage of our water resources, the wetlands per se. So that is one area that we really have to actually focus on so much. Otherwise, thank you very much for the team inviting me to come. Because of other commitments in the office, I will have to leave before the whole work comes to an end. But I really have learned a lot from this. And then thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. from the Small Grants Program at the UNDP. Thank you so much, Dade, for your contribution and those wise words. And without further ado, I'll continue to hand over to my co-host, Sepile, to carry on with the questions.
Okay. Before I continue, Mario, I see your hand is up, so feel free to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to Group D3 as well for your presentation. I think what I like about it is your long-term vision and how digital development can help overcome the barriers of geography that exist. Highlighted in the presentation. I think in the short term, perhaps one of the biggest challenges for digital infrastructure development is energy. In Lesotho, less than half of households have access to electricity, and there is a lot of space to cover there. I was just thinking if you've given some thought about how you would accompany. I've seen that energy generation, renewable energy generation is part of your concept. I was just wondering if you could elaborate more on that, if you envisage, for instance, floating solar panels on the dams, or wind energy or hydro. What is your thinking there? Thank you.
Okay, so hello, my name is Maria and was one of the D3 group members. And thank you very much for your comments and the question. I will try to answer the last one. So in first place, okay, I'm not majoring in computer science. There was another student that was working it, so I will try to respond to the best of my knowledge. We have considered a scenario that would impact the environment and the pristine nature of Lesotho. So clearly we discarded the floating solar panels or even wind farms. We are investigating if there is a possibility to exploit some of the energy coming from the water, basically from the dam. If there is an opportunity to power, like exploiting a part of 110 megawatts coming from the dam to power the data center. Clearly, it means the data center cannot be very huge, thus small, medium-sized. At the same time, we expect that if we manage to attract an investment into a data center, which will, of course, have social impact such as employability, we hope that this would, in a way, also improve the current infrastructure, energetic infrastructure in the country. This is both a hope and an expectation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria, for that answer. Just to latch on to that, what you just said, what level perhaps of investment would be needed, or to finance these kind of computing centers, and what level of investment would be needed?
Currently, I don't have any figures like in front of me, but just to make an example, currently such large companies as Microsoft, but we can take even something like medium-sized, I don't know, are investing heavily in data centers, especially those that will be powered by renewable sources of energy. So this is something that we are addressing mostly to larger companies which have the power to finance such operation.
Okay. I see there are no questions or hands up. My last question then would be, how do maybe small companies or small businesses participate in the data centers or the power production, just so that there's a holistic benefit for different companies?
Well, okay, consider that, of course, it would also mean the realization itself of the physical data center. It can be, it's not supposed to be a large building, but still it will have to be powered, it will have to be implemented. And plus I see opportunities on the side of training, professional training. So like there will be a need for certain professional figures that we hope will be hired from the local population and community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria. I will hand over to Teddy to share with us the last video of Group D4, Face to Face.
Hi everyone, we are a multidisciplinary team of 7 students of Alta Scuola Politecnica. We joined on a program of the Polytechnics of Milan and Tourism. We are Alessandra, Sara, Giuliano, Claudio, Silvia, Paolo, and Francesco. Thanks to the ASD, we had the opportunity to get to know this and understand its complex situation. Most Europeans may be surprised to learn that Lesotho is a really lush country with mountains and water throughout the territory. Additionally, we were impressed with its rich cultural heritage, but unfortunately, we also discovered that this country faces numerous problems, mainly in the area of water management. Nowadays, water is mainly collected in dams and then exported abroad. Despite the large incomes, it generates lots of difficulties for the population. The difficulty range the need for relocation to water scarcity. With regard to the spiritual value that water holds for the Lesotho. Cultivating knowledge, we work with our team to design a project that can improve the situation, empowering the beautiful country. The main idea is that water is not mainly for the product. The local population will not benefit from the change in the like the dam. The aim of the project is the economical and spiritual reappropriation of the resource by the local population. Water must return to their hands and then be incorporated into something that will help us grow with an international audience. But this time, in a completely different way. This is our face-to-face. We propose to create a network of local artisans focused on clay pottery. The activity is already present in local and it implies a direct use of water. Additional batteries are another product. Both will be decorated with traditional pottery patterns, which are part of this culture. This will be integrated by the implementation and promotion of eco-tourism patterns. The people who usually visit the dam will also have the opportunity to visit the local community and see how water is by the Lesotho. Thus representing potential customers. In parallel, the creation of an e-commerce website will capture those potential customers that are not able to travel to. People will purchase not just a product, but an experience. There will be the possibility of customizing trainers and licenses. This way, the customer will be able to see the manufacturing process in real time. Additionally, they will be kept updated with pictures and reports. This will help them understand understand the culture behind this project. The effort of involved stakeholders would be wide and rich in interconnection, ranging from local artisans to international travelers. Moreover, the key aspect of the new global perspective is the international visibility that Lesotho will gain through this project. As every product is a unique product, it allows participation to international events, doing such events, expo or the land design. Lesotho's district will use virtual reality for engagement in the country and its local activities. As a result, water will stop being just an exploited resource and reclaim its cultural significance. This will enable the local community to open up global scenarios in a more conscious and respectful manner. We performed our risk analysis to identify the potential global survival here. One key aspect of the underlying is the scarcity of proper infrastructure investment. This could affect the tourism component of the project. However, in the short term, virtual reality will be helpful, promoting the best project of the internationality of the project. The ideal timeline for this had the goal of using some of the earnings to build up local infrastructure such as roads and public transportation. A positive will be created between the project, the country, the population as a whole. For us, it has been an honor to have the chance to design something for the empowerment of the Lesotho. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Group D4, on this two phase. It's very insightful, and I appreciated a couple of components that came from it. And as I wait for people to raise their hand or write the questions, I'll go ahead and ask my question. I noticed that your proposal suggests a number of ways of integration or multiple components, multiple proposals, if I could say, which is artisanal products in terms of e-commerce, and then which is also this idea of virtual reality. Could you take us through your thinking of why you sort of having multiple things instead of one, and also how that could be of benefits financially to the local community of Lesotho?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah from Group D4, and I'm here with my colleague Claudio. So if he wants then to add something, of course. I try to answer your question. We are aware that our project involves multiple aspects and multiple ways to engage with the community and the country of Lesotho. We thought that it was a good way to integrate this aspect to get a better result. And I think that one key point is that the project has many ways to develop. Like, it can start small with local craftsmanship, with the first purchases on the online website, but then it has the possibility to grow in many different ways, like supported by the tourism component of the project. And we really care about the international visibility. And that's why we also push towards the participation to international fairs. And that's where the virtual reality connects with the virtual reality of the e-commerce site, helping getting into the project. So in my opinion, it's something that can start small, but if things goes well, has the ability to develop more in the future, in the long term also.
Yes, exactly. If I can add something, I just like to point out that the objective of our project is to attract customers and people to get to know Lesotho. So that's why we thought of many ways to interact with those people that could be able to reach Lesotho in different ways.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia, for that interesting response, and Sarah as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to fill in the survey that I've just shared in the chat box right now to let us know what you thought of this webinar and which topics you'd like us to discuss in the future. We've come to the end of the webinar. Time really flies when we're having lots of fun. A lot of interesting things that were discussed today around the presentations that were done by the Alta Scuola master's students. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. I really liked all of this out of the box ideas that were presented today towards the success and towards the development of Lesotho around water realms, geopolitical, cultural, and all aspects that have been included in today's presentations. And also around growth mindset, which is what Mr. Yoshiri said a bit earlier before he left, that we need to imagine what Lesotho could be, in order to bring it into reality or in order to create it. And I'd like to thank you also so much, for this webinar, for the kind of networking that it would have created, towards creating opportunities, for Basotho youth. I'd just like to find out, if there are any closing remarks. I'd like to invite all the groups to, say some closing remarks from each one of them. So can we kindly start with group D0, and then we'll work our way upwards.
Okay, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present our work. And it was really great to just have a feedback from you that you know the country better than us. And it's always a challenge to face with a place that it's not really comfort. Like, we don't know what's really happening down there. And it was just a great opportunity. Thank you again.
I want to join Aurora in thanking you for this opportunity. And it's been a challenging project, but also an interesting and fun one, I would say.
Okay, so I think that I can go for team D1. The same. I want to thank. It was really interesting to go in 1 week from not knowing basically anything about the country to proposing solutions, always with the goal of improving the life of the Lesotho people. So thank you for the opportunity, and let's hope that some of the ideas that we presented here actually end up improving the life of the people in Lesotho.
Thank you so much. Can we go ahead and hear from another group, please?
Yes, sorry. Thank you once again. It was a pleasure, and it was really intriguing to be part of this project. As my colleague Eduardo said, we had really a small amount of time, but maybe because of this also was more interesting, and in this way we really learned a lot. And we are also happy if any of our proposals could improve lives of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
very
this.
Much to all the groups for your insightful presentations. I'm sure everybody in here benefited greatly from it. And on behalf of Rise and my co-host here today, we'd like to thank each and every single person for joining us this afternoon. And please be on the lookout for our next webinar, which I believe will be on the 30th of March. If you're around and local in Lesotho, we're going to be having in-session live lectures at one of the universities in Lesotho, either Lesotho Polytechnic or Limpopo. So please look out on our social media channels for updates and what our next lectures and webinars will be. So with that said, thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The opportunity.